Arizona faces a very winnable game and a must-win game against Oklahoma State coming up Tuesday.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for keeping it Locked On Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day, your team every day. Show is brought to you today by FanDuel. You can put down, or actually you don't have to put down anything. You can just get an account and get $300 in bonus bets at FanDuel.com. All right. Arizona basketball is in a must-win game against Oklahoma State. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk a little bit about Seth Doege, the offensive line filling out, what expectations should be. But the first thing we need to do is we need to get to Arizona basketball and what a win would mean against Oklahoma State. All right, now, a lot of times on this show, we break down teams, what to know, all of that stuff. We're not going to do any of that with Oklahoma State because they stink. We will not do any of that. Oklahoma State is not a good basketball team. This is far more of one of those ones where it is, what does Arizona have to do right to be able to secure this victory? And the first thing that you've got to figure out is what to do with Trey Townsend. This was put out there, and I don't know that there is a more destructive basketball player that I've ever seen at Arizona than Trey Townsend. He is that bad. There's been worse players, but not worse players that have played 25 minutes per game and basically just give teams points away. And it's a comedy of errors. How about that? And what he does, he puts down. First of all, he doesn't play hard, so that's a big thing. Besides not playing hard, which is generally not a good thing, he also decides that he is going to defensively not really give much of an effort at all. And I think that is another thing that is obviously not a good aspect to Trey Townsend. Also, he does not rebound. He is probably the worst big man rebounder that I've ever seen here for somebody that actually plays minutes. It is terrible to watch him he doesn't try to rebound. He's got short arms. He doesn't give an effort, and he's just not good. He doesn't finish around the basket. He can't shoot at all, and he doesn't defend. Now listen, this isn't all on Trey Townsend at this point, to be very clear. This is on Tommy Lloyd for playing Trey Townsend. That is the bigger part about all of this, is that Tommy Lloyd is entrusting the keys to this with Trey Townsend. That is not good enough. You cannot have that happen. And watching him play again, you also can just tell that he's not going to get any better. He is not capable of being better, even if he tried. So obviously there's that. Tommy Lloyd has got to figure this one out because it has gotten to the point now where it is bad. And it is very noticeable. Not only is it very noticeable, it is it's disgusting. I mean, it's just bad. It's just bad. So, and Carter Bryant here's the thing that I think a lot of people are very, very confused about with this entire Tommy Lloyd situation with Trey Townsend, is that Trey Townsend is certainly not held to a certain level that some of these other players are. If Carter Bryant messes up, Carter Bryant is taken out of the game immediately. And we've seen games where he's played 9 minutes and hasn't committed a foul. Carter Bryant is, outside of ADO, the best shooter on the team, certainly the best NBA prospect on the team, and a player that can get better. He can also block shots. He can do a lot of different things. Is he perfect? No, he is not perfect. But guess what? He's also pretty good. He's got a lot of potential, and he's just not being allowed to show that. He is taken out at every single turn. Nobody gets it. Also, same thing is occurring with Henri Veesaar. Now, Henry's been getting a lot more minutes. Obviously, that is a good thing. We like that. But Henry did not play well against Texas Tech. So guess what? Henry went to the bench. Here is, I think, where this is all frustrating and confusing for so many people. Fine. I don't think that anybody is set, but Henry then sits on the bench. There's accountability for Henry. There is accountability for Carter Bryant. There is no accountability for Trey Townsend. And Don't know what else to say other than nobody gets it. It does not make any sense whatsoever. I don't get it, and I don't think anybody that's watching these games gets it as well. So Tommy Lloyd has got to figure that out. That is your first key to victory. Now, I don't want to hear the thing about, well, he might, what about Baylor? He had 9 points and 4 rebounds against Baylor. Cool. But still, come on. I mean, when that's like your highlight game, that kind of proves the point. So you've got to figure out what you are going to do with him first. And that's a big part of this because you're not going to win a lot of games if you continue to play him in the manner in which you have. That is just not going to happen. All right. Now, the other thing too, and I'm kind of at the point now with Caleb Love where it's like, all right, if he plays well, cool. If he doesn't play well, then we just kind of expected that. But that's kind of where we're at with this. He is a player that Caleb Love is a player that we have seen do very, very good things. And not only seen do very, very good things, a player that was an All-American last year for Arizona. But that has not been the case at all this year. He has taken a huge step back, and he's more or less been bad. Listen, there's been some games where he's been good, but overall on the season, he has just not been that guy. And I don't really understand why that is the case. I don't think that anybody really understands why that is the case. But it's a game though that you watch them and you're kind of like, he's either checked out or whatever the case. That last 5 minutes against Texas Tech was atrocious, where he was just jacking up threes left and right, and you could tell that he really didn't care. He was just going to do what he wanted. That game was not out of reach for Arizona, but they panicked, and that game went out of reach. Caleb Love's a dude, I think, at this stage in the game that just, I don't know if he's lost himself, if he's checked out, whatever the case may be, but he's been bad. He's been really bad. And that game, he was bad. Now, KJ Lewis is somebody that he's not somebody like Caleb Love that depends on, his shot going in to be effective. Caleb Love can do a lot of different things. And not only can Caleb Love do a lot of different things, KJ Lewis, he can get into the paint. He can do a ton of different things. Not only can he do a ton of different things, he can also do things where he gets into the bucket, he makes passes, he just does a lot of different things that I think are pretty, he's got to do that. He's never going to be a three-point shooter. That's just not going to be the case. And he's not going to be somebody that is going to come down and cross you up and make plays off the bounce. That's not going to be him either. But what he can do is he's shown this. He can power drive into the basket. He can get you the bounce pass. He can get you the dump off. He can do a lot of those type of things. And he can finish around the hoop. He's got a nice little mid-range floater. He's got to play to that. And when he plays to that, he's a really effective player. But he's got to play to that role. And he's one of the players, too, that he should, in my opinion, he should always be good offensively because he's not one that it really matters if the shot is falling or not. He should be good either way. And if he's good either way, then Arizona's obviously going to be good as well. But he's another one, though, that he's just got to play. He's got to play better basketball. With Jaden Bradley, I love Jaden Bradley. Jaden Bradley is my favorite player on the team. He plays solid basketball, period. People complain that he's not a great facilitator. That's probably true. He's not Mike Bibby. He's not going to rack up a lot of assists. He's not going to be, but he's a really, really good defender. He's a decent enough scorer. It's not like he's a bad passer. He's just not necessarily your traditional, your prototypical point guard. So, but he's been really good at this. We all know with him now, you're going to basically get 12 to 15 points, 3 to 5 assists, and you're going to get really, really good defense as well. That's what he's been able to do, and it has been cool to watch because, again, he's a player that, I really, really hope that Arizona is able to get back next year because watching him, you also can tell that he's a dude that you win with, especially if you have really, really good players around him. He's going to be even more effective, and I think that's where you watch him and you're like, okay. But that's kind of where we're at, though. You need Tommy Lloyd. The first thing you got to figure out is what are you going to do with Trey Townsend, because you can't keep playing him the minutes that you are. because let's be honest here, it's just destructive. And not only is it destructive, you're giving away points, and it's just something that doesn't make a lot of sense for Arizona. You got to figure that one out. And if you don't figure that one out, then that one is pretty much on Tommy Lloyd. Now, we're going to talk about some of the other players on this team that are really going to make an impact as well. But first, Prize Picks. This message is brought to you by Prize Picks, the place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions in winnings. Woohoo! Prize Picks has changed the game daily to daily fantasy sports, whether it's the playoff or regular season. Prize Picks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all of the football action. Ready? All right, here's the deal, though. Ready to run your game this football season? Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, again, $50 for just playing. Don't wait. Hop in, take your game to the next level with Prize Picks. Prize Picks, run your game. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day, your team every day. All right, now, some of the guys coming off the bench then that we talked about. ADO. Listen, there's going to be some games where ADO just isn't good. I get all of that, but I think we know at this stage in the game that ADO can do some good things for Arizona basketball. And the big part is that he can shoot. This team doesn't have guys that can shoot the ball. ADO is a spacer, and also ADO can get to the bucket a little bit. I am curious to watch ADO against Oklahoma State. I think that he should have a pretty good game against Oklahoma State because ADO, it's the kind of game that he should play well in. And if he plays well, then Arizona is likely to play well as well. There's definitely something in there about, with ADO and the way that he when he plays to a certain level. Arizona obviously is much tougher because he's given you something that I don't know that Arizona necessarily thought that they would have. The problem, though, is that Arizona also has guys on the team that, for whatever reason, Tommy Lloyd has. Arizona doesn't have a backup point guard, and that's a problem. Arizona does not have a backup guard, and that's on Tommy Lloyd, period. That's on Tommy Lloyd. And because, you have Conrad on the team, but Conrad is kind of a charity scholarship, and that's just not good enough. I don't believe you have to have a backup guard on the roster, and it can't be somebody that you don't feel comfortable playing against good teams. And I'm not beating up Tommy Lloyd on this because I wouldn't play Conrad against good teams either. He's not good enough. He's about 4 feet tall. I mean, sure, he's a good player, good kid, but he's not an Arizona level player. He's a Grand Canyon level player, something like that, or NAU, whatever. Arizona doesn't have that backup point guard to be able to make things happen. That is going to be an issue pretty much. That's going to be an issue pretty much all season. So that's obviously got to be corrected this offseason, though. There's no doubt. There's no way around that one. But Arizona got to win this game. You should be able to beat him up front. One player that I got to give a lot of credit for is Tobe Awaka. Tobe Awaka is good. I do apologize because he is a little bit better than I thought he was. With Awaka, he's girthy. He gets rebounds, and he plays hard. He's basically the opposite of Trey Townsend in that he does try really hard. He's just not very, there's times when he's just not very good. But he does play hard, gets a lot of rebounds, and this is the kind of game where I need him to continue to show that. And against Oklahoma State, you should be able to. Because, again, like I said, Oklahoma State's not very good. You don't have anybody on that team that you're worried about going for 35 points on you. And if they do go for 35 points on you, then that's on you, Arizona, because you deserve to lose that game if you lose to Oklahoma State because they are bad. They are bad. You also, again, it's one of these ones that you want to split on the road. If Arizona wins this game, they're then still 6-1 in Big 12 play. You can look backwards from there and say that, okay, now you just got to take care of business going forward, and things can be better. But this is a must-win. There's no way around it. You've got to be able to win this game. No ifs, ands, or buts. You've got to be able to win this game. You win this game, then I think everything feels a little bit better for Arizona because then you got Colorado coming up. And Colorado is one of the absolute dregs of the conference. They might be the worst team. They stink. At that point, you'd be 7-1, and I think you start saying, all right, maybe Arizona's got a little bit of potential here to, run some stuff off. You got Iowa State then coming into town. That will be it will be interesting to see how that all does play out. But that's kind of where it is at with this one, in my opinion. Now, we got to talk a little bit about Arizona football, because, again, we are a football school. Everybody knows that we are a football school. Seth Doege. I love Seth Doege. That guy is awesome. He is the Arizona coordinators. I like Dwayne Aquino a great deal last year, as you all know. But he's obviously in there as the defensive backs coach. I think Danny Gonzalez, I like what Danny Gonzalez did. I like how Danny Gonzalez interviews. I like how Danny Gonzalez talks. And, if you look back, people generally at his previous stops, they kind of like what he's done, and he's kind of a gregarious guy. He's somebody that, people like being around. And you can kind of see why. He's got a little bit of a, a presence about him, I guess. But Seth Doege, though, is the one that you're like, okay, watching him. The first thing that he talked about, and we had him on another network, was he talked about Noah Fafita, and he's got to get his footwork right. Last year it was bad with Noah. You weren't really getting any coaching. I mean, let's be honest here. There was really no coaching that Noah Fafita was getting. Dino Babers, the game had clearly passed him by, and Noah was out there just kind of winging it. He was running around, doing all kinds of different things. Just really certainly wasn't the Noah that we had seen the previous year. I put a lot of that on Dino Babers and just being in over his head. I also put a lot of that on just an offensive coaching staff that didn't know what they were doing. But you got a new guy in here now, and you look at his background. When he was at Marshall, they ran the ball a lot. When he was obviously playing at Texas Tech, he threw the ball a lot. And he's talked about, the big thing with him is that you have to be able to do a multitude of different things. And you've got to be able to look at your roster and say, okay, this is good, this isn't good, this is good. And you got to be able to adapt to who you have on your roster. Whereas last year, I don't think that this offensive coaching staff had any clue what they were doing, let alone who was even on the roster. So he knows that. He's taking inventory of that, but that's a big part. Now, I think with the wide receivers, there's some dudes on there that can play a little bit. Obviously, Luke Wysong, Chris Hudson. You've got Chris Hunter back. There's some guys there that I think can make a little bit of an impact. You got Kellen Ford coming in at the tight end position. A big part of this, though, is going to be the offensive line and how the offensive line does play out. But first, FanDuel. Check it out. FanDuel. All right, here's the deal with FanDuel. All right, here's the deal. From the first whistle to the closing snap, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs more exciting. Just visit FanDuel.com today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, and the official sportsbook partner of the NFL with FanDuel. Also, you've got the national championship here shortly. You've also got obviously you've got the AFC and NFC title games. You got the Super Bowl coming up. You got the NBA. You got college basketball. This is the perfect time of the year to hop in on FanDuel, and you can bet live during the games as well. Who doesn't like to do that? So again, check it out at FanDuel.com. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. Locked on, your team every day. Okay, now the O-line. The O-line's going to be obviously a massive part of how Arizona wants to go about doing this. The O-line has got to be better, and it's going to be a trick because you've obviously lost Big Jonas Savanea, who's going to be a first-round pick. You've got Wendell Moy, who left. You've obviously got Josh Baker. Now, I think a big concern for me, though, is that Josh Oglesby is back. I don't know that you look at Josh Oglesby and say that that's the guy that is going to get it. But At the end of the day, Brent Brennan wants Josh Oglesby back, and guess what? He's going to get that. So we'll see. We'll see who's the how that plays out. I don't have a lot of faith in it, but still got a new offensive line, or still got a new offensive guy in there. So there is that. Now there are some guys. There are some guys that you look at and you're like, they could get a little bit better. The Deuced Boost. Deuced is he's a massive individual, and he's somebody that's really, really large. He's been in there. They like him. Could he be one of those guards? You've got the kid out of Hawaii as well. You've also got Ty Buchanan. He's played a lot of football. You got Tristan Bounds. You got a lot of different. You got a lot of different players. But I think the question is, you've also got no center at this stage. Now, there might be somebody on the roster that you're looking to move to center. We'll see how that does play out. But, overall, I think they did an okay job on the line, but you still got to get better. And we're kind of at the stage, too, where I'm not going to sit here and say that that anything is going to be great, because we just don't know how this is going to play out. We all got bit last camp. Arizona's just got to be better. But the offensive line, that's going to be interesting. In the offensive line, it's going to be interesting to see how they how that does play out. Now, there are some other guys that maybe on the roster you could go ahead and you could see how this goes, but Big Rhino, you need Big Rhino to stay healthy. I'm assuming, and I could be wrong, that it's going to be Big Rhino and it's going to be Ty Buchanan as those two tackles. And then I think on the interior, you got a couple other options, but also it's going to help, though, too, I think, having an OC that knows what he's doing, Noah getting the ball out early, and I think a running game, that's going to be a big part of this. Excuse me. Where you've got somebody, Akedrick Risano and Ishmael Mahdi, you've got different options back there, and I think that's something that this coaching staff has wanted. They wanted different options. With Alonzo Carter, he's probably the one coach on the staff, the outside of Dwayne Aquina, that, whoever he wants, I trust to be pretty good, just because, listen, Arizona, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt was going to be the best running back on the roster last year. He just got caught with his hand in the cookie jar. But Quali Conley was Quali Conley was a really good backup. And, if he had been your backup, I think Arizona would have been just fine with that. I think Risano and Ishmael Mahdi is probably going to be a little bit of a step up for Arizona. I think that's something that to bear in mind, to keep watching. And then, so we'll see. It's going to be interesting, though, but I at least have hope, because you have a young offensive coordinator in there that has done some different stuff, has been around the block as well. He was at USC, obviously at Marshall. He's got a background with different offenses, and he's somebody, too, that his track record is pretty darn good, and he's hungry. He's been out on the recruiting trail. He's been doing a lot of different things, and again, he had the run raid last year with Marshall, and then last year, and then at Tech, he obviously winged the ball around. So I like guys like that have an ability to be able to look around and be like, okay, here's the roster that I have, because at Arizona, it's not going to be like Alabama. It's not going to be like Ohio State, where you've got 5 first-round picks at every single position and you can basically do whatever you want. That is not the case. That is not the case at all with this. So that is obviously a good thing for the Wildcats. It's going to be interesting to see how that does play out. But Arizona, though, is in a must-win game against Oklahoma State. You have got to win this game. You got to get to 6-1 on the season. If you get to 6-1 on the season, then I think you look at Colorado and you're like, Colorado stinks. Where are they going to be then at that point? You beat Colorado, you're 7-1. Then you got a little bit margin for error. Keep in mind, you got Iowa State coming into town, so that one's going to be difficult. You want to be able to just get as many of these wins as possible, and to just be able to keep racking these ones up. And then with football, obviously, new man in charge. It's going to be interesting to see how he does play this out with Noah Fafita, how the offense looks, because I don't think that the offense shouldn't be nearly as bad. I know you're losing T-Mac. I get that, but the offense shouldn't be nearly as bad, just because what we watched last year was inexplicably bad. But on that note, though, Very, very much appreciate you all making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day, your team every day. We're going to be back with you tomorrow on the post game, breaking down Arizona, Oklahoma State. Hopefully, we're talking about an Arizona victory over the Cowboys. You have a great rest of your day, everyone.